so much of gratitude, and I
Okay, got
hope
it, got it.
this whole evening of about 45 minutes runs well for all
Got
of
it,
you.
baby.
So
Hmm?
it's my pleasure here to discuss about grief, which is very close to my heart. After being trained from the Kessler's Institute, being trained with Kessler, who has always worked with
Sure, sure.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who we all know as the mother of grief therapy,
That was
and then
so
following it
close
up
to you.
with Kessler. So when
Hello?
this whole prospect of
Hello?
suicide
82.
prevention week and suicide
Level
prevention
clicker.
day, which comes tomorrow, activities we're working on,
நான் ரவி
we
கிட்ட
thought that
சொன்னேன்.
we should not just stop with
அவர்கிட்ட சொல்லவே இல்லை எதுவுமே.
looking at suicide prevention. We should also take it across
நான்
to
இதுதான் சொன்னேன்.
families,
நான் எயிட்டி
where families or friends or others who have lost their near and dear ones because of death by suicide. So that's why we thought we should not just stop with people who have passed away because of suicide. We should also reach out to their near and dear ones who are grieving. So that's the reason why we thought that we should take up this as one of the most important aspects of discussion. And I would love to hear from all of you after my presentation. The reason why I said small things matter is not many people, not many of us talk about grief when it comes to death and dying and all that, and especially when it comes to death by suicide. Many of us also kind of, I'm not talking about the mental health professionals. I'm talking about others, non-professionals, or other professionals, where I see a lot of stigma working around. So I felt it is for us, the mental health professionals, to take this up, and that's all about CPSI taking us, giving us the initiatives and hand holding us to and mentoring us to take us to newer levels of mental health and clinical psychology and psychology profession as such. So this is a brief overview of what I would be taking you through, and this is the disclosure. Certain points I would want all of us to keep in mind is the only agenda here is learning. We are only looking at validating our understanding of grief, and especially looking at death by suicide. And we are looking at ethical practices. Professionalism is the only key role holding on. And at any point, if anybody feels overwhelmed, please take the space and look at the support system around you. Please hydrate yourself so that you are well grounded. Yeah. So let me start on with definition of grief. I think all of us have learned somewhere as part of our MPhil training, and I remember it was one of the 3-mark questions which we used to get, and it was just a small portion in what we learned during my MPhil training. I don't think it has changed much. I teach in IMH, so I still see grief as one of a very small part of learning. But especially when I was going through the training with Kessler and later with Erica, because I also got trained in handling grief with for adolescents. I understood the depth of this whole aspect of grief, and I felt it is something we need to move beyond just the 3 marks questions. Yeah. So what we understand is grief is any reaction to a loss, and it leads on to a lot of emotional aspects, not just sadness and anger.
Okay.
A lot and lot of emotional aspects, especially when it is grief because of death by suicide, and it definitely ranges from person to person. So if you read a lot of research articles, especially David Kessler also talks about grief is as unique as our fingerprints or pupils. So each person grieves in a different way, and it also depends on the background, the beliefs, the relationship to the person, and also other factors. Yeah. When we look at the ICD and the DSM, at one point was not even any important at all. It was considered as a disorder, or it came in something where after the mood disorders were there. Grief was not given as it really deserves, and that is also changing now. The Grief Summit happened a few months ago, and now ICD-11 has incorporated the cognitive disorder, which is very heartwarming, because we do consider grief as one of the important aspects where mental professionals like us can definitely bring more quality of life working with these people who, if you look at it, there is a plethora of emotional pain and which is very intense. So you see people who have gone through grief, especially when it is
It's still
death
coming,
by
no?
suicide, there are a lot of questions and emotions bombarding them in their mind. Yeah. And as we go ahead, we also see that DSM-5, which is again heartwarming to see that grief is
Okay.
acceptable and culturally approved
Yeah,
response to a common stressor or
I'll
loss,
try to do
such
something
as
on that
death
right
of a
now.
loved one, is not a mental disorder.
Okay.
So we've
Only if the
reached a
video's
point where we
content
consider
part is shared is
grief
fine.
as something which is as
Video
common as,
speaker.
you
Okay.
hit somewhere, you feel pain, or you have a
Okay.
cold or feel flu. It is not even pathologized that way till
Okay.
we move into prolonged grief disorder, which is, so the initial 12 months is considered as part of grieving, and that's the reason why I think culturally in different religions, the initial few months of rituals and the bereavement, the mourning, all of that is so important when it comes to working with grief. And as human beings first and mental health professionals next, we also have to understand that we live in a society which is also influenced a lot by societal norms, religion, and other scriptures. And we also have to be cognizant that grief works a lot when it also includes the norms and societal aspects of religion and culture, right? Prolonged grief disorder, this is available online, and we can always look at the DSM to get these informations, right? I wanted to also discuss about this particular family who is seeing me for grief. Interesting part was
Yeah, bro.
this person who was 26 years old. He's an IT professional working in Bangalore. Good job, good professional growth, a good set of friends, good number of people around him. Everybody parents were okay, and it so happened that everything was planned as well as possible. He was about to get married in a few weeks, and then suddenly he thought of or he decided to end his life. And I have not seen him before he died, but I am now seeing his whole family. So initially his parents came in to talk about, because the mother was totally struck by the decision he took, because there was nothing where they could put their hands on as to what is it that made him do this. Yeah. Then the father and the mother came first to meet me. Then they brought in the father's brother, came with his son, and then also his grandchild, and also the mother's side, there was mother's brother and sister who came in. So it's not just the family which we are looking at, and this person's sister came in, and it was a huge family get together in the place where I work, and we were all looking at what could have been possible reasons that he decided on such a drastic step. And that's what we are looking at as survivors of suicide, which is way back in 1972, where Albert Cain wrote about it. However, we are now looking at that as an important aspect of survivors, where we look at a survivor is a family and friend who remain after the person dies by suicide. And they also have considered moving ahead in 2011 as a survivor who experiences high level of self perceived psychological, physical, and social distress for a considerable length of time after the exposure to the suicide of another person, right? And they also have mentioned different levels of this, where Cyril in 2014 talks about these four aspects, where we are looking at people who are exposed to the particular suicidality, people who have been affected by it, people who have been exposed for a short term, and also for a long term. So what do we understand here is that as clinical psychologists, as mental health professionals, it is also our duty to look at, so maybe supportive therapy, maybe CBT, maybe grief resolution therapies for each one of them. So it's not just the exposed people who need the therapy, it is also people who are into short-term effects or long-term effects of it. So it's very, very important that we consider that, this slide gives you a clearer understanding of the model, where Zerel talks about, et al. Talks about, different levels where people who have lost their near and dear ones, it need not be always a family member, it could be a mentor, it could be a friend, it could be a roommate, it could be a hostel mate. So, it could be a neighbor. So for us, ending life by one's own decision, I think culturally and religiously, there is a lot of aspects connected to it, right? And grief by itself is so heart wrenching with the plethora of emotions we go through. It also adds on when there is suicide related to it, when a person decides to take his or her life, and we always consider, what could have been the reason for it. And proximal causation is one of the things which we talk about when we look at grief per se. An event which is closest to or immediately responsible to the observed result is what we think in mind. So many times the proximal causation need not be the cause of it. So this particular gentleman whom I was talking about, who decided and then took his life, the nephew who is in class, much younger boy, he's in class 6. He was not able to understand why his uncle, his mama did this, and he was talking to me as to his mama used to help him in maths, and he felt that he was responsible for mama's death because he got less marks in the the test which happened a few weeks ago. And that was a kind of guilt and the responsibility this young kid was taking it. So you can imagine the amount of guilt and blame and responsibility of the suicide which the parents have been going through, the sister has been going through, and I'm sure all of us can relate many experiences like this when we work with people who have lost their near and dear ones. Husband because of suicide, and every other person is talking about it, and it is so difficult for this particular person just because she's a celebrity and the husband was also a celebrity. So it becomes difficult because every other person is looking at, why did he do this, what could have led you, is it because of you? So those are questions which are coming on social media, those are questions which this particular person's family members and friends and colleagues, co-workers are all asking her, and that's the social stigma which is coming in. Police questions because of the legalities. There are thousand and one very personal questions which have been asked, and when she was narrating this to me, I was also feeling so vulnerable along with. I could see that she was so vulnerable, and I was feeling her pain along with her, because this is the kind of insensitivity which the legal system has been bringing in, right? Without even considering that this particular person is going through a grief, right? And that's a scrutiny which we are looking at. There's also one more person who I've been working with. She is friends with somebody, not very good friend, but kind of in the circle. But she knew about the friend's suicide through social media in the Instagram page, and that was a big heartburn for her, because she had just spoken to the friend a few days earlier, and the friend had said that I'm feeling low, and she had just brushed it away, saying, what is wrong with you, you have achieved everything in life. And then she started taking it personally. So she came in because she has OCD and we are working with the OCD. But the other day when she came in, she was like I don't want to do ERP or anything, I just want to talk about my grief. And that was quite a revelation for me when I understood that even a social media Instagram page could be so heart wrenching for her, because this friend who died was not a very close friend, and the more she was thinking about it, the more she could look at the grief and I could look at the grief and the guilt which she was going through. And there is a lot of cultural and religious doubt. So we are also talking about karma. I'm hearing people talking about, am I the sinner? Will I get moksha? And these are all things which is so deep rooted in our religion and spiritual guidance. There are a lot of times when, the questions are very, very bombarding. And if you look at research, there is a lot of research, not just abroad, even in Indian studies. I purposely did not put too many studies because I don't want the webinar just to be on numbers. It has to reach out to people as to what is it that we can offer as mental health professionals. And we know that there is an increased risk of self-harm and suicide in survivors. And that's the reason why it is very, very important that we look out into these people. Okay? Emotions, if you look at it, there is a lot of conflicting emotions ranging from sadness to anger to regret to guilt to frustration, helplessness, feeling vulnerable, feeling abandoned and rejected, fear, and sometimes relief. It could also be that, I have lost this near one, but I'm also kind of relaxed, especially when it is something like a chronic illness and the person dies by suicide, and then the caregiver feels that there is a relief, which also adds on to the guilt. Right? Why is a question I'm hearing from every survivor of death by suicide, and I don't know. I don't have an answer to it, and I'm equally puzzled like them, right? And it is interesting to know that why is a question which is causing the maximum kind of resentment, guilt, and anger towards themselves, towards the society, towards the person who is dead. Did I know the person who died was another question many of them were asking, because many of them felt that there was no need, there was no necessity as such. There were some times when there was a financial loss or a job loss or a relationship breakup. So some of them were able to pinpoint and say maybe this could be a reason. But many of them I'm talking with, we still don't have a clear-cut answer of what could have made this person make a drastic decision, and that only adds on to the emotions. What did I do wrong? That is a lot of guilt and rejection and regret which can come in there, because many of the the parent who the mother who asked me as to, did I do something wrong, was there anything in the way I brought up my son that this mother was asking me this, which again a question of where did I go wrong, what did I do which was wrong for him to make such a big decision. And that is what one of the things which we need to look at in cognitions, right? We all know about this Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, one of the celebrities in grief work, and we also know that her stages are not linear. The person can start on with depression, the person can start on with anger, and it can move from different levels. And David Kessler has added the sixth stage of grief, which is called the meaning. There is a interesting bestseller which talks about meaning. And what he talks about is, instead of post-traumatic post-trauma and decline after that, he looks at using these memories as giving meaning to one's life. Being grateful that this particular person has been in our life, has been a source of power and source of love and kindness and power and hope, and helping that, using that to move ahead. Honoring the loved one is what we are looking at, and that, I think, is what we would need to look at as we move ahead in different stages of grief work, right? I would want each one of you who are here in this webinar along with us to please go through each of these statements. And it is very, very important that we also maybe it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be anybody else, that there's no point in using any of these statements, because they're not going to help the grieving person, the person who's lost their near and dear ones. It is not going to help that person in any, even an iota of there is no support there. Yeah, things like get over it, you can't be grieving for so long, did you not see this coming, did you not consider that your spouse was depressed, or your friend was depressed, just don't cry, just stop crying. He look at the other person, he also lost somebody near. and then he is being strong or she is being strong. Why can't you just think of the positives? Why, at least they lived for so long, they're not suffering. Things like that, which is so discounting of the whole experience, right? Things as in that, she was so selfish, and why did he commit suicide? And most of the times we don't even use these words as commit suicide, because it's not a mistake which this person has done. It is not a crime which a person has committed. It is a decision which could be a decision because of the pain this person has gone through, and it is only that person who knows. So there's no point in again guilt tripping the family member who is there, who is now going through the grief. So I would want all of you to take this message ahead, and educate other people who are working along with you in when you work with grief. Yeah. Facilitating statements, this is again from a lot of research data, and also when we use statements like this, it also helps a lot in connecting to the other person, building the rapport, building that we are together in this journey of healing and handling the grief, right? I don't have the right words to tell you, but I want to know that I do care for you. You and your loved ones will be in my prayers. So this need not be always that we have to have in a therapeutic relationship. It could also be if you're meeting a friend who's lost someone, especially a friend or a family member or a neighbor or a mentor or anybody whom you know who has lost someone, especially when that someone has decided to end their life by suicide, right? How can you help? How can I help you today? Or how are you today is so mindfulness based. We are not looking at your past, we are not looking at the future, we are looking at here and now. And that's one of the strong questions we've seen when we are looking at here and now, which is so mindfulness based. And it really helps people to focus here and now rather than looking at how have you been throughout this week. Instead of that, let's ask questions as how are you today, and what is it that you would want to discuss today? And that kind of empowers. This is something which someone had sent me, and I felt it was so heartwarming, because there are there are these three words which every Indian movie talks about, but we are not just looking at those three words. We are also looking at the other four words, which means that I am here for you, and that it could be a therapeutic relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be any other relationship. But what we are looking at is it could be as a friend, it could be as a companion, it could be as a professional. That confidence that we are there, I am here for you to help you move through this journey. This actually helps and supports and provides a lot of unconditional regard to this person, right? Remember, we are not trying to fix the grief, and this is this important aspect, like in the solution focused thing which we look at. We are not looking at fixing, because we can't be bringing back the person who died, right? So we need to honor and respect the loss and the person, right? We can't just say that get over it, move about, and think of something new. No, we have to give that space and the time and honor and respect the loss. Respect the need to socially connect. Of course, we can't just focus and push the person to get up and come out and meet people and talk about other things. No, allow that person, give the space, and if the person really wants, yes, we are there to support you and take you, or get other people to support from the family or friends and look at. So this particular person who lost her friend, and she knew from the Instagram page, thought that they should have a prayer meeting to commemorate, and she organized that, and she said that that was very heartwarming for her, because it was a time when they all sat together, spoke about the friend, and looked at good memories they've had with her. And the friends' parents also were there, and they were very grateful to this particular person, because she was the one who thought about organizing this. And she said it was so heartwarming, because every one of them could be there. It was just for an hour, 1.5 hours, yeah. But the amount of emotional catharsis which happened was very heartwarming, according to this person. And all of us know this, interesting video from Brené Brown, which talks about, do you want a sandwich? And I would encourage students and other professionals who are logging in to look at this video, which talks about not to silver line the whole process, not to look at, and tell people that, so what, you've lost one friend, why can't you look at having another friend? Or you've lost one parent, why can't you just look at another parent and be happy about it? Because it's not that. It's not that, you've lost one dress and then, you just go to the supermarket and buy another dress. It's not as simple as that. This is a human being with lot of love, with lot of loving memories, with lot of compassion, with lot of um, happy, pleasant. It could also be times when they've had fights, or then they have had misunderstandings, when they've had loving connections. There's so much beyond just that human being in the muscle and bones. There is so much beyond that. And we can't just silver line and say that, just get over it. You have to think of other things. No, we have to allow that person that space and respect and honor the whole process of grief, right? And what we understand is grief comes as waves, and we also have to understand that we need to learn to step. Okay. Explaining suicide to children and adolescents is very, very important, especially as mental health professionals. We need to be very sensitive about this whole process. We have to use age appropriate conversations and not bombard them with too much of unnecessary informations or unparliamentary or illogical informations, because kids are smart, adolescents are smarter. Okay, and I know all of you would agree with me that compared to my time, kids and adolescents are way much smarter, and they understand concepts much more ahead of, I think, my time. So it's very important that we look at making it very clear to the teenager or the child that it was not they who caused the person's death. Because there are times when, recently when I was talking to this celebrity, the first question which she was asking me was that apparently there were people who said that the celebrity's daughter was having an affair with somebody else, and everybody blamed the daughter, a young teenager, and everybody was blaming the daughter, saying that, it's because of you that your father thought of dying by suicide. So even when I was speaking to the daughter about the relationship, about the, her relationship, which she was very, very guilty that, saying that, did I make a mistake? Was it because of me that my dad did such a drastic step? And that's the kind of guilt which people would throw back on them as saying that, it's because of you that he made a mistake like this, right? And that's where we as mental health professionals need to work on helping them understand that it's not because of you, right? This is also something people would I would encourage all of you to maybe take a screenshot or make notes, so that these are positive self-talk messages. We don't start on with this always. We do give them enough time to ground, build rapport, and be there, understand that it's a safe place. We are there as non-judgmental support systems, and then we move on to positive self-talk messages, right? And this is from Erica, where she's allowed us to share this part alone, where we talk about these are things which especially teenagers work well with, when they have these as cards and they carry it, or a screensaver and they carry it. So when we work with survivors, when we work with in the group therapy sessions, we use many of this, and we also try to help them look at one of them as especially it's all right to take breaks from my grief and do fun things, because many of them feel guilty that if I go out with other people or if I watch a movie, am I being dishonest to the person who's dead? So many times we also have to work on those cognitions as to working with, especially when we are working with teenagers, right? Very important guidelines are be aware and accept things beyond one's control. So even as mental health professionals, we need to give them the space. We can't be insisting that get over the grief, and we've had 2 sessions and it's high time you get over it. I was recently talking to about last month. I was talking to a student who brought in her sister's friend who is going through grief. Again, the sister's friend's boyfriend, sorry, died by suicide, and the friend was not able to come out of it. And this apparently this specific person who brought her, the student who's doing her MSc second year, she told me one very interesting statement as to, ma'am, I told her that grief goes through these stages, and it's almost like 2 months since you've gone through this, and you should now reach to the level of acceptance and just move ahead. And I was like awestruck as to how could she make decisions for the person who's going through the bereavement, right? So I was also explaining to her that grief doesn't work that way, as to, it is not like the stages are linear and then every week you go through a stage and then you finally reach acceptance and move on. You will need to give that space to that person. It took some time for this student to understand that grief is not linear, and just because she told her sister's friend to move away, the sister's friend is not just going to move away from the grief, right? So it is also important that I think students who have logged in have to understand that we need to be giving them the space, being aware and accepting things beyond our control, responsibility and blame. So just because you're not able to take care of your child, because you're grieving, or you're not able to get back to work as per the norms, we have to understand that there's no point in blaming them for that. We also need to give them that unconditional support and see how we can help them bring back the hope in life. There is no right way to grieve. It is each one's prerogative to decide how I would want to move through grief and what is the time frame I will take to go through the grief. We also have to be very clear about anniversaries, birthdays, and festivals, especially now after Raksha Bandhan happened. Okay, a couple of them spoke about. The last year, one of them lost their brother by COVID, and another death by suicide. And both of them were very, very sad that, the whole world is tying Rakhi to their brother, and here I am. And we also did this as a, kind of function where they could do this as a commemoration of tying the Rakhi. And it was so nice being there and looking at how they were working through the grief and looking at, their Rakhi brother being there, getting the Rakhi, not in physical form, but in their memory. And it was so nice to be there as part of this whole support group, right? And that's what we look at. And we also, as professionals, we need to understand that there can be spurts of grief because of the anniversaries and festivals and all of that. And now, of course, we have Diwali and Navratri and Christmas and all of them. And there's been a lot of movies which have also come in. We know a lot of movies connecting Christmas with grief, and it's so good to know that people are considering grief as important aspect. This is a very, very brief work on psychological therapy. There is a lot of research, and I'm sure all of you know a lot about grief work, especially when we use grief response cards, which is definitely used, especially with kids and adolescents, where it's easier for them to see the response card and work on that as a cue to explain and talk about their grief, right? And we also have to understand that normalizing death without the hush hush suppressed way of, you shouldn't be talking about death, you shouldn't be talking about death, especially when it is by suicide. No, we need to talk about death. We need to destigmatize death by suicide. We need to understand that grief is very much part of us, right? Like how we celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, functions, festivals. We also have to be together. Need not be celebrations, but we have to be together, providing that support when it comes to handling and working with grief, right? We are also looking at self-compassion, self-care, acceptance commitment therapy, a long way to go. Grief yoga, Paul Denniston has done a lot of work. It is something similar to yoga, the Indian system. He brings in a lot of emotional aspects to it. When I got trained, Paul Denniston also came in and gave us some demonstrations which we had to do also, which is very, very interesting because it also helps us to look at movements in the body. It could also helps us to be in touch with different emotions, and all of that helps us to kind of connect and develop hope, not just in ourselves, also with people who have been grieving. And something very interesting is that just because we are mental health professionals, there is no rule that we can't be going through grief. We are human beings first, and we can also lose. It could be lose someone by death by suicide, or lose someone who is near to us, maybe by a chronic illness or a sudden death. But what we need to understand is grief is ubiquitous. All of us do go through it, right? And it's important that all of these support systems, the therapies which we correctly learn as part of our training, is so going to be helping each of us in our. So these are a lot of questions. I'm not going through this in detail, but a lot of questions, lot of helpful bits when it comes to solution-focused therapy, ACT, and so much being done as part of the therapies, right? This is from the survivors guidelines, which is freely available online. The top priority challenges are to prevent further suicide. So I would encourage, implore each one of us to stand up and support each other as human beings, not just as people from Tamil Nadu or people from Kerala or people from Delhi. We are human beings first. So not just Indians, we are human beings first, and we all are together as mental health professionals to work together to prevent further suicides, and to most importantly support the survivors. And it's very important that we take this up as one of our goals in life, and it really is going to help a lot of us working when we work with these people, because it's also rewarding for each one of us. There's a lot of references. I would want each one of you, before I end, to take the pledge. Of course, we have the other pledge, but I felt this was one of the pledges which is very interesting, not just interesting in the cognitive way, also interesting in the emotional way. So I would encourage each one of you to sit down in a place where you know is safe. If I could also request each one of you to kindly place your hand over your heart, and if possible, if you could close your eyes, kindly place your hand over the heart and feel the movements, the rhythmic pulses, the heartbeats. And this is the purpose. And we are also knowing that we are alive for a reason and never to give up. And that reason, the purpose, is to bring in more professionalism, more human connection, more unconditional support to everyone, especially for survivors of death by suicide. That's my last slide. And gently open your eyes and let's take this up as we move ahead. And this is, I would want to stop with this because Winnie the Pooh is one of my favorites, one of my kids' favorites too. So when we were watching and the series, this actually sounded very well with me. Right. Okay. So thank you very much. I will stop sharing. I would be happy to listen to any reflections, thoughts, because I know there are a lot of senior clinical psychologists here, and I'll be happy to get your guidance too. And students and people who have completed, freshers who've just completed MPhil, masters, I would be happy to take questions or reflections. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, you can also invite the messages, ma'am. Maybe ask them to type the questions.
Right.
I think they may have a difficulty to unmute.
Yeah. Okay.
You can ask people to unmute, ma'am.
Yeah. So if you could could send the questions on
There is a-
chat. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a beautiful webinar, ma'am. I loved how simply you explained all the concepts, how to be more empathetic towards people. Thank you. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate. Thank you, ma'am. Rupaya Muhammad. Thank you, ma'am. Please do give us more comments and encouragement and questions, of course. So if you could put it in the chat box, it would be helpful to us. Yes, thank you so much. This is one of the questions I'm also trying to get answers to. Thank you, Sidnaini. This question is about how to handle grief in special kids with autism and intellectual disabilities. Again, as we said earlier, it is important to understand how well they're able to understand concepts which are abstract, like death and dying. Because many times we also have to look at the intellectual level of the child or the adolescent or the adult and try and explain concepts in them. Right? But not much literature, and I'm sure there is a lot of need for research in that aspect. Thank you for thank you for your comment. Can we get the PDF or video recording? Dr. Suresh, you will have to help me with that
Yeah,
answer.
it will be available in the website, ma'am. They can go to the CPSI website, they can access it.
So you can please go through the CPSI website. Please do become members, because we are thinking of having, we are not just thinking, we are definitely having more and more webinars. Right? There are people who act very normal, even though they are depressed and having thoughts of suicide. Yes. How can we help? Yes. So that's where we are looking at, thank you, Sneha, for this question. It's very important that, people consider the openness, because generally what happens is when people are talking about dying and self-harm and other aspects of taking ending their life, we kind of pressurize them. We tell them to just keep quiet, or many other people are not even happy to talk about it. So that's where the education, spreading awareness of this is really part of life would come in, right? Can you briefly explain about psychotic episode and suicidal ideations and suicidal hallucinations? I think that is slightly going beyond my purview. Maybe we will take it up in another setting where we are looking at suicidal hallucinations and psychotic episodes where people do end their lives because of hallucinations. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Prasanta. Thank you, Dr. Rujuta. Thank you so much. Session will be available to revisit. So we would put it on the YouTube channel of CPSI. So please do visit and share the channel with your other professional members, with students of psychology and other mental health field, so that we can take this information and knowledge to a larger group. And of course, we would encourage all of you to be members of CPSI and encourage your students and friends to be part of CPSI. If any more questions or suggestions, please do note it in the chat box. Or if you have worked with one whom you know has gone through bereavement, death by suicide of a family member, uh, Thank you, Ritvik, for giving the information. Please do look at the chat box because Ritvik has been posting the information about the YouTube channel. So you could check through the YouTube channel and get the recording.
If any participants want to ask any questions, you can raise your hands. We can unmute you.
Uh, I I am not very clear about this question, Kalpana ma'am. For a psychologist, if the case of suicide has come, what a psychologist should do is, I'm not sure whether, do you mean this, that whether the psychologist has gone through bereavement, or I'm not very clear about the question, ma'am. Kalpana Anandani. Some people take a sudden decision of ending their life after they had a bad incident that happened. Yes, we all face ups and downs. But how can we help people who take sudden decisions without ending their life? Yes. So we are also, right now we are looking at more of, helping people who are survivors, because at that point, if a person is thinking of um, dying by suicide, and if all the plans, if the intentionality, lethality is high, then there is not much which we can do at that moment. But of course, we do have barefoot counseling, we do have psychological first aid, we do have gate keeping. So all of this would help the person to help. And right now, our focus in the webinar is to look at survivors of grief. Yes, I mean, what immediate measures should be taken for? Right. Okay. So there is this suicide gatekeeper whole process. I don't think we have enough time to talk about it. I think it's Dr. Kalpana Anandani. We don't have that time here right now to talk about. But if you could look up for the suicide gatekeeper, you would definitely get a lot of information on that. Yeah. I think Manoj sir has raised hand. Can you please?
You can unmute and speak, sir.
Yeah. We are also having webinars on how to handle suicidality as we move ahead. So we would be doing that with another speaker of this. How to handle the army school students of hostel have so much aggression and anger, even self-harming nature. What is the remedy? I don't have a band-aid remedy there, sir, but there is definitely a lot of work which we could bring in, especially when it comes to supportive work, when it comes to psychoeducation, when it comes to handling aggression. It could be behavior therapy, it could be interpersonal therapy, it could be dialectical therapy, it could be anything which helps the child. Yes. Mainly right to. So if you could also give us ideas about or suggestions about what other topics you want us to discuss as part of webinars, please do inform us and we will be happy to take it.
Dr. Manoj, sir, you can unmute yourself and speak. Matthew, could you just unmute Dr. Manoj? Matthew, could you just unmute Dr. Manoj?
I've unmuted Dr. Manoj actually.
But his mic is still being muted. Dr. Manoj, sir, you need to unmute yourself at your end and you can
Yes.
speak. You It has been enabled to you. The mic has been enabled to you.
If anybody else has any questions, also you can kindly. Right. Yeah. Thank you, Sneha, for this. How to enjoy solitude, stoicism, sorcerer or psychologist, sanity or insanity. Very good topics. Thank you, Sneha. We will definitely look into that. Yeah, thank you, Lena, for this question. As psychologists, we do come across traumatic incidents in our own life. The suicidal thoughts in ourselves as a degradation of our profession as a human. We do have bad incidences too. Grief is also same to all of us. Yes, very much, very true, Dr. Lena. I totally agree with that. And that's when we talk about compassion fatigue, a secondary trauma, and all of that. So there is a lot of work on that by people like Kristin Neff and a lot of people, Britt Frank, a lot of people who have worked on that, and it is a very important aspect where we look at supportive work on ourselves, self-compassion, self-care, and all of that. Yes, so that's an important aspect you brought in, Dr. Lena. Any other comments or thoughts? Ritvik, what happened, Manoj Kumar sir?
No, he has logged in through web app, which will be having limited options.
Right. Okay. Maybe he can send a message.
Yeah.
Times.
No.
Yeah. Sneha says sometimes we get suicidal dreams or anything disturbs us a lot. How can we deal with such dreams? Again, we need to look at maybe Prasanto Kumar sir can give us some ideas about dream analysis. I think he's also here. We would look at a webinar on dream analysis, and Sneha, please to join us on that webinar when we talk about dream analysis. Right. So do
Any
we
more
wait?
questions or comments?
Can we check with Karthikeyan sir if we can close?
I think we don't have anything yet. Go ahead. Out of exit.
So if there are no more questions or comments, so we would like to wind up this session for the day. And yes, Ashwini Patil ji, you can, our admin has dropped a message in the chat box. You can visit to our website, cpsindia.org.in. So wherein you will be able to get the links to become the members. So please do log in to our website. You will be having all the details in our website. So please do join and support the cause. So we would like to bring in more and more of academic support and also the professional support for the whole fraternity. And by this, we conclude for the day. And madam, there are some more questions before we wind up.
I think it's again people giving us suggestions on future webinars. So something where we need to look at sadness and what depression means and what sadness means. Yes. we will definitely look at all of that. Yes, thank you, Sneha. Yeah.
Thank you. So all your suggestions will be recorded in our chat box. So we will be taking all your suggestions for our future topics from the chat box. No, we do not provide e-certificates for the talks or the webinars. So if we are conducting any kind of workshops or any specific kind of seminars or kind of a thing, we do provide the certificates. For the talks and these kind of small events, we do not prefer to give e-certificates out. Thank you for bringing that question, Mr. Ambadi Suresh. Yeah, and by this, we are concluding the session for the day. And I would profusely thank our speaker for the day, Dr. Katie Pai, for having spent her time in preparing herself and bringing up more and more of information in this particular field so that it will enlighten us. And it's a very need of the day. Okay, and need of the hour. So we are able to equip ourselves with much more knowledge and the skills to handle the grief of ourselves and also our clients, whoever drop down to us with this particular conditions. And I would like to thank our National Vice President, Dr. Karthikeyan sir, and Dr. Suresh sir, the Secretary of CPSI, who have joined us today on the meeting. And also, I would extend my thanks to all the zonal vice presidents, Dr. Prasanto Rai sir, Dr. Nadeem Kirmani sir, and Dr. Sudipta Roy ma'am, and national president, Dr. Jamna Rajeshwaran ma'am, also had extended her warm wishes to the program. So I would thank all the office bearers of the CPSI for making efforts to bring in more knowledge and academic activities to the fraternity, to the professionals, and also for the students to enhance the knowledge and skills of the profession, and by thereby enhancing the services to the needy. And I would once again thank the Trias team. We have Matthew with us. Matthew, after my vote of thanks, you can run the Trias video.
Okay.
And we request the participants to hang on for a minute. So we'll be having a Trias video, so you can have a look in through, and also we would be it will be helpful for you for your regular professional practices. Thank you one and all for joining us tonight. And Matthew, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Ritu.
We introduced Trias, a fully digital EHR platform designed to make mental health clinics, centers. We introduced Trias, a fully digital EHR platform designed to make mental health clinics, centers, and practitioners go paperless and manage critical data in a simplified and compliant manner. Trias, a virtual assistant that helps the users to use the platform without typing or writing.
Chief complaints.
Listening.
Patient has anxiety and sleeplessness since 3 weeks. Along the onset of daytime sleepiness, which affects his work and personal life.
Trias is also equipped with an end-to-end performa, which includes history of present illness, premorbid personality, mental state examinations, diagnosis, and more. Trias also offers options to integrate tools like alcohol screening, clinical global index, well-being chart, genogram, and various other IQ tools, along with a sophisticated dashboard of the patient, which shows all the information in one place. Book your demos today and get a free 30-day trial of Trias. Please visit our website www.trias.in for more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. All our CPSI members will be able to avail a 30-day free trial of the Trias. So whoever is interested and whoever has become the member, so please do reach out to our website, so wherein you will be able to get the links to experience your free 30-day free trial with the Trias. So it is definitely a wonderful platform to which will be helpful for your day-to-day practices. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, one and all, for joining us tonight and making our first academic program a successful event. Thank you, one and all. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ritvik. Thank you, Suresh.
Thank you, Kirti ma'am.
Thank you, thank you. How many people
Thank you.
came?
Roughly 85, I think. Maybe
Ah,
plus or minus 5.
Because 200 plus people had registered, but maybe
270 plus.
posted. So maybe people after we post in the YouTube, maybe people.
Yeah.